Yo folks, and welcome to the channel. My name is BAYC. In today's video, we'll be talking about how I find Solana NFT Alpha or NFT Alpha in general. Let's go ahead and jump right into this. First things being is I like to check SOL analysis right here, see the price of SOL, check where the market caps are at, what the top projects are essentially doing, you know, floor wise. I'm not really too like, oh, it has to be like this price or whatever. I just want to get a feel for everything. It's just like, what's the market feeling like? Is it up day, down day sort of thing? The next thing I sort of do is jump into SOL Radar right here. It has a really decent pulse on Magic Eden and Digital Eyes, so the marketplaces on where their volumes are going. Just note, like something like Monkey Kingdom was heavy manipulated, so if you see something like that on Twitter, be very wary. This was at like 28 SOL price earlier, and now it's down at 16. So this is something to pay attention to quite heavily. And then after you look at some of the volume on the top projects, I like to look at Solana Floor. By the way, they're going to be releasing their Pro Edition with the She Guardians. I recommend looking into that. I'm one of the admins on their Discord, and it's going to provide you even more metrics on supply. So the number of owners, the number of tokens listed, this, that, and the third, you'll be able to see all of the volume. I think it's so important to understand the supply of different tokens or different NFTs. That way you can tell whether something is going to be either one, being manipulated, or two, has long-term health. Because for example, there's going to be long-term health in SMBs because there's a very gradual increase in owners and diversity. And you can see that based off of the different wallets that have ownership and based off of where like the supply countries could possibly lie at. So the second person who owns 259, that can be a little bit scary. But the thing is, I think that might be Big Brain or someone, and you won't see like those SMBs ever get listed. So it's something very important to sort of look at when you're looking at supply dynamics. So She Guardians is going to give us even more insight on that. I would love to see it once I get my hands on one. And then I like to look at Magic Eden to check some of the volume based off of like the 1 day, the 7 day, or the 30 day. It's really important to sort of see, like for example, Portals is number one. They're doing the most volume right now. We'll talk about it a little bit later. But you can see their floor price is at 11.25. That's not important. I'm really looking for the demand. Where is like everyone's eyes on? And you can see like it has like this weird thing. Click the volume button right here and it'll order everything appropriately. You can see that the Shadowy Supercoder DAO, they have the top volume with Boryuku Dragons, Degen Apes, and Portals. A lot of the SMBs, they won't be sold on Magic Eden. They'll be sold on like the actual SMB site. So it's going to be difficult to gather their metrics, but that's what Solana Floor is essentially for. And then you also, once I like pretty much gather all the different metrics for Solana NFTs, because all I'm doing at the very beginning of the day is getting like a feel for the market, what's going on, just to sort of understand where SOL is at, where the NFTs are at, is there actual volume being moved in the market, is there any supply crunches that I need to worry about, and then I go into OpenSea to get a general overview on what's like the next sort of NFT trend. Because a lot of like the Solana NFT like things that we're going through, ETH has done the same thing. And essentially the only difference why I don't transact on ETH is because I cannot personally afford the gas, even though I think ETH is really cool and they start a lot of things. So Kaiju Kings is something to sort of look into that, because the project that immediately pops up into my head is Boryuku Dragons, who's been doing insanely well. And there's sort of a reason for that, but if you look at Kaiju Kings at like the long term, what they have been doing hasn't been well. But I'm not trying to FUD Kaiju Kings. I think Kaiju Kings is doing something amazing, you know, with their concept with $R waste and all the different things. Boryuku Dragons is different from Kaiju Kings in the sense of where they sort of put themselves on the market. But let's look at the other top projects on ETH NFTs. And that's going to be Bored Ape Yacht Club right here. If you look at their all-time, they didn't do that well, but just note May and moving forward, these were not hot times during crypto, but then all of a sudden in August, they started to garner a lot of steam. There was more mass adoption with celebrities and all that stuff, more mass adoption in like the news. And you can see like everything just kept going up. And some of you might be wondering why that is for Bored Ape Yacht Club. Because if you showed something like this on Solana NFTs, where essentially like one of the projects that you initially had was like dead early on and then garnered traction, you'd be like, what the heck did they do? They did a lot of marketing tactics. They essentially got Bored Apes in the right hands. And I think their like sort of ambition to be like the top project is different from everything else. We'll talk about it later. And then we have Sandbox right here. All right, we have to talk about Sandbox because it's the number one. It's doing the most amount of volumes, doing like not the floor price. Notice like it's not number one because floor price of 3.29 is obviously much less, but it's based off of the amount of like transactions occurring and the attention it's garnering over in OpenSea. You can see all time there was like spikes at certain points, but you will notice that there's insane amounts of volume essentially occurring within like the November, December sort of time frame, because as much as amazing it is like these spikes are occurring, this is like even more like amazing once you see the actual volume. But if you go here on Business Insider, you will see that one of the lands sold for $4.3 million. That is obviously a huge number, and it gets people to sort of understand that there's something going on mass media wise. And why are we covering this? We just talked about the metrics for Solana NFTs. We just talked about the metrics when it comes to ETH NFTs. And now we're comparing trends between Solana NFTs and ETH NFTs based off of mass media adoption that we are now seeing in Market Insider right here, or Business Insider, right? Because if you combine like the metrics between like different chains, and then you look at what mass media is sort of looking at, where it's like, hey, you know, something sold for an insane amount of money, that's where like the top projects are sort of going to align at, where there's going to be mass adoption coming to the project in the long term. At the very beginning, there's going to be very focused interest, for example, in Kaiju Kings with where they want to deliver, but then it needs to hit mass adoption slowly. And, you know, for example, Bored Ape Yacht Club, they were able to get multiple celebrities, not just one celebrity, but, you know, Jimmy Fallon, Post Malone, Steph Curry. There's even more, like I think Steve Aoki was holding one. There's so many different players essentially in this NFT space, but the key part is they're constantly holding. They're actually holding the bag that they talk about, and they're not dumping their bags on people. You know, even in CryptoPunks, that was an insane deal when Visa started buying them, and you know, that hit mass adoption. And it really started like that NFT craze that you sort of see in Bored Ape Yacht Club, where, you know, around like the August time, people started going crazy. You know, you can see it right here. CoinDesk released this on August 23rd. And then you go into Bored Ape Yacht Club, August 23rd, they were doing craziness. August 25th, things were like absolutely insane for them. And then you sort of jump into other things where obviously there's metaverse plays that are really hot right now. And one thing is the Solana did 100 million in 1 week. And this was obviously based off of, you know, some tweets by someone like Lee Jin, who was comparing Magic Eden to OpenSea, and, you know, just comparing volume. It's not like there was like 100 million sale. That was the amount of money spent in a week based off of the volume that was considered, right? The most important part that I want to look right here is Portals describes itself as Animal Crossing meets Sims, and they did a raise of 1.65 million with their sellout of the 5,000 key cards. And then there's been like 7.5 volume in essentially sales in secondaries, which is through Magic Eden, and obviously has me bullish on Portals for the long term because metaverses are really hot. But then some of you might be wondering, what about like your correlation between Boryuku Dragons and Kaiju Kings? Because Kaiju Kings are obviously not performing of the same level. Why didn't the Boryuku Dragons hype sort of die? Well, you can see it right here. They bought a piece of Sandbox, and they bought that piece of Sandbox. They tweeted this at November 29th. And when did that sale occur for like that metaverse play that we were sort of looking at? This was on November 30th. So they sort of foresaw themselves, the devs, or, you know, essentially the marketing people foresaw like this super hype on metaverse properties, and they pivoted themselves. Even though they're not directly a metaverse related project, they got the eyes on themselves in Sandbox still. And that's so important because when you are sort of looking at all of these different metrics, you're looking at volume, you're looking at prices, you're looking at, you know, what is essentially the latest hype between, you know, ETH and Solana. You're comparing like mass adoption. But the most important part that Boryuku Dragons did is that they are essentially building themselves to be not one chain, but multi-chain, but also able to pivot on the fly and notice the top trends. That is what's going to separate a lot of these top projects from others. The way they are able to integrate with the market on mass adoption comparative to other projects. Because it's not just about Solana NFT dominance, it's not just about ETH NFT dominance. It's about being essentially that project that can translate into other projects very easily. We're gonna live in a multi-chain world. We're gonna live in a multi sort of metaverse world. It's not just going to be Sandbox. It's going to be, you know, Decentraland as well on top of that. Maybe even Portals is going to be on top of that because Portals is, you know, very quick on the transactions, thankfully, because it is on the Solana blockchain. So I'm not sure if you guys watched the movie Ready Player One, but essentially there was multiple metaverses that you could jump into, where it's like, hey, you could jump into like a Cartoon Network sort of world, you can jump into the main character sort of world, you can jump into like King Kong sort of world, all of these different things. The important part that you need to know is that top projects, they're not going to be maxis on just themselves. The top projects will want to inhabit every single forum of the chain, and of course being cross-chain against all these different avenues, because it's not just about being good at one place, it's about getting so good that you can market yourselves everywhere and be everywhere. And that's why I think BAYC Dragons executed perfectly in that sense. Not to mention they're garnering hype with their auctions. You know, they have a $235,000 sale that's going to be upcoming. I'm not sure when this video releases, the sale might have been even higher. But the most important thing to know is that the projects that will be successful in the long term is what you sort of want to look into. If you want top alpha for something that will be easy, join a Discord and you find, you know, a project that's going to be a stealth, it's going to be 2,500 or less. Essentially, you can manipulate the tokenomics really well, and you can get like memes and influencers and all the different things. That's for the short-term alpha. Short-term alpha is like, it's easily manipulated, but it's not going to be essentially long-term looking where they get CoinDesk or Business Insider to essentially cover them. That's a different type of alpha, all right? But if you're looking for something that's going to be the next CryptoPunks or the next Bored Ape or the next BAYC Dragons, the next Kaiju Kings, or the next like SMBs, it's sort of important to understand that the devs have to have a long-term vision and able to pivot onto the latest news and latest trends. It's not just about being in one particular niche, it's about being everywhere and having all of the eyes constantly on you. It's marketing, marketing, marketing when it comes down to these NFTs, because you could be the top project right now, but it doesn't matter if the eyes are no longer on you, because the eyes have to be on like that mass adoption, scalable sort of entry. But anyways, if you've made it this far in today's video, consider subscribing, dropping a like, leaving a comment, follow me on Twitch, follow me on Twitter. Once we hit 3,000 subs, we're doing a giveaway. You can see all of the links right here in case you want to check them out. This is like my notes and stuff. But let me know, how do you guys find alpha? Obviously, I can, you know, scroll through Twitter, scroll through Discord, but I want to look at the macro level. What are like all the different chains doing? What is the news outlets looking at? And how is that going to essentially form like that perfect sort of puzzle that you've been trying to solve for that NFT to hit mass adoption? But yeah, thanks so much and see you guys in the next one.